The U.S. Constitution is supposed to be the basic law of our nation. Scores of millions of Americans have sworn an oath to uphold it, including U.S. presidents, vice presidents, executive branch officers, members of Congress, state legislators, judges, and members of the U.S. Armed Forces. But I've seen some things that made me wonder, how many of them really know what's in it? And if they don't know the Constitution, how can they uphold it? I had an inkling of problems way back in my younger days when I took a course in freshman English at the University of Hawaii, Manoa. This was an evening class, so most of us were a bit older, in our early 20s. Another student, a military man, had turned in his English composition to be read aloud to the class. The composition started out something like, "The Constitution says that all men are created equal, and that we have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." I immediately pointed out to our instructor and the class that that was from the Declaration of Independence, not the Constitution. The instructor's reaction took me aback. Barely looking up, he waved me off and said, "That's not important." Then to the student, "Go ahead, continue." As for that military student, he was one example of an oath taker who didn't know his Constitution. Watching the Republican presidential candidates debate at the University of Michigan in Dearborn on October 9th, 2007, here's what I saw.
If you were President of the United States, would you need to go to Congress to get authorization to take military action against Iran's nuclear facilities?
You sit down with your attorneys and tell you what you have to do, but obviously the President of the United States has to do what's in the best interest of the United States to protect us against a potential threat. The President did that as he was planning on moving into Iraq and received the authorization of Congress.
Did he need it?
We're going to let the lawyers sort out what he needed to do and what he didn't need to do, but certainly what you want to do is to have the agreement of all the people in leadership of our government as well as our friends around the world.
And that wasn't all. Candidates Duncan Hunter, Mike Huckabee, John McCain, Fred Thompson, Rudy Giuliani answered the same question similarly. None of them said that the Constitution requires a declaration of war by Congress. I was floored. Ron Paul was the only one who said unequivocally that the Constitution requires a declaration of war by Congress. Here's Secretary of Defense Leon Panetta earlier this year in a Senate hearing.
Do you think that you can act without Congress and initiate a no-fly zone in Syria without congressional approval?
Again, our goal would be to seek international permission, and we would come to the Congress and inform you and determine how best to approach this, whether or not we would want to get permission from the Congress. I think those are issues we would have to discuss as we decide what to do here.
Well, I'm almost breathless about that, because what I heard you say is we're going to seek international approval, and they will come and tell the Congress what we might do, and we might seek congressional approval.
Unbelievable. These were far from the only times I saw the Constitution being given short shrift. I saw other politicians, journalists, my friends and neighbors, Americans all, saying things that set me to wondering what they knew about the Constitution. This called for an investigation.
Scott Nago, I'm the Chief Election Officer for the state of Hawaii. Candidates have to take the oath of office at the time they file their nomination papers. The wording on the oath of office, they have to do two things. They have to swear to uphold the state constitution and the federal constitution, and they also have to discharge their duties as an elected official. All candidates take the oath of office throughout the islands.
I think the Constitution of the United States is one of the greatest documents ever authored.
Oh, I believe the U.S. Constitution is, for lack of a better description, it is the parameters under which we operate, not only as a U.S. Congresswoman, but in our day-to-day activities in our life, because that is the document or the laws which govern how we look at issues as well as how we really should look at each other.
I think it frames my work as a state senator. It gives me the rules of the road.
The Constitution is very important. Yes, it is.
Why do you think it's important?
I don't remember because I never paid too much attention to that subject.
How long have you been in this country?
I've been here 28 years, so I've lived here much longer than in the Philippines. I moved here when I was 16.
Do you think the U.S. Constitution is important?
It's very important. It's what holds us together as a nation.
Based on the Constitution, it takes an act of Congress to declare war.
It has to be something that is agreed upon in Congress. The president should not just be allowed to dictate that we're going to go to war or have any sort of military action towards any country without approval of Congress.
Oddly enough, maybe not just an attack on us will make me decide if we should go ahead to war.
What constitutionally would make a war legal?
Oh, what constitutionally? I believe we have it set up where the Congress has to pass before we go to war. Is it right? I would say yes. At least we have some ways that so the president himself cannot just proclaim war.
I think what's legally necessary is to basically just fight for that one reason instead of keep poking around for many others.
What would that one reason be?
Like, if they started war first or they are initiating war, then to fight to defend their country instead of like fight that war and then wait around for more, I guess.
Is there anything that's constitutionally necessary for us to go to war?
Yes, because you're protecting the people and your country, basically.
It really depends. In this time, especially in this age, if you go back in history, a lot of it was really simple.
What makes it legal?
What makes it legal? The recognition of a specific entity. For example, the Constitution is one, right? And whether the United States deals with other bodies of government in the world, for example, the United Nations.
I believe that for the U.S. to initiate military action against another country, that there has to be a life-saving rationale or reason, that we shouldn't just invade them because they don't follow our idealism and things like that.
When it came things to even simple things like the Second Amendment, gun rights, I actually probably back then didn't believe in gun rights as I do now today.
I think the portion of the Second Amendment that you may be referring to as being under attack is the right to bear arms.
The Second Amendment is the right to bear arms.
Can you tell me what the second is? I'm sorry. A right to bear arms. I understand that the Second Amendment is under a lot of debate, whether we can bear arms.
The Second Amendment, I don't remember.
About guns?
About guns, that's what it's about?
Okay, the Second Amendment, if I remember correctly, is the right to bear arms. Okay.
The Fourth Amendment of the United States Constitution basically protects one from illegal searches and seizures.
Well, I think a bunch of people wrote the Federalist Papers, but my hero, one of my heroes of the founders is Alexander Hamilton. And when I was in the House, I used to quote the Federalist Papers a lot. James Madison also had a role in it too, and in fact, I think he probably wrote more of it. But basically interprets the Constitution. You know, any constitutional scholar, the Supreme Court, when they're trying to see what the founders meant by certain constitutional amendments, by the writing of the Constitution itself, they go to the Federalist Papers because it was written in real time, you know, right after the Constitution by the people who wrote the Constitution or had an input in it. And therefore, it's guidance, you know. Under Western jurisprudence, it is about looking to how people interpret laws and building case law on that. And this is one of the original sources to go back to. And they're brilliant.
Someone told me recently that law schools don't teach their students the Constitution. They teach them to win cases. Would you agree with that?
I don't know whether law schools teach students to win cases rather than the Constitution, because I've been out of law school for 25 years. If that's what's going on, I think that's wrong. I have seen evidence of that in the courtroom through the new generation of attorneys in the courtroom who seem to believe that their job is to win at all costs. And that's not what your job is. The job for a prosecutor is to seek justice. For a defense attorney is to represent your client zealously, but within the confines of the law and your rules of professional conduct.